We're fortunate to be together today at American Family Field. Thanks to GMC board member Cecilia Gore. Cecilia is so graciously hosting a meeting for the second time. I think it was about this time last year, right? And I remember that one because that was the first time I met Gil, all 7'6" of Gil, and he was, you know, his head was up in the rafters. Anyway, we're thrilled to be here as we gear up for the baseball season. Today's meeting is focused on neighborhood investment, and the Brewers Community Foundation is a leading partner of so many in Milwaukee. Baseball has long been a thread that ties neighborhoods together, bringing families, friends, and generations to the same fields and stands where community pride and shared traditions take root. Through its investments in youth programs and nonprofit partnerships, the Brewers Community Foundation strengthens neighborhoods and fosters opportunities, connections, and belonging across our region. To share more about their work, please welcome Cecilia Gore.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you all for being here today. We're ready to kick off this baseball season, and I know I'll see many of you in the stands throughout the next 80 home games. We plan to have a great season. I was in Arizona and met many of the players, new and old. Everyone's ready to go. Pat Murphy is ready to charge out and make a difference, so I think we're going to have a great season. I have my shameless plug on everybody's table, our infographic that talks about Brewers Community Foundation. It's the charitable arm of Milwaukee Brewers Baseball Club. I'm proud to report that I returned from Arizona and I have 100% giving from our players, which is always for me the start of the season. And I tell each player that the possibility of them being put onto the 25-man roster has a lot to do with whether they sign on financially and commit to time and money. So I have 100%, so we'll see how that unfolds. But thank you so much for being here today. I did get a request to run the bases, but I don't think the bases are out yet. So when you run back to your car, just breathe in the American Family Field spirit, and we'll see you end of March, early April, and throughout the season. And thank you, GMC, for allowing us to host you.
All right. Thank you, Cecilia, for bringing us together in a place where we can all proudly celebrate the pride in our community. And we're especially glad that our Cubs fans felt comfortable enough to show up today. So thank you all for making it. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to acknowledge International Women's Day. Although it was yesterday, it's still well worth recognizing and celebrating the incredible women who strengthen our communities, lead our institutions, support our families, and help shape a better Milwaukee every day. Hello, everyone. I'm Langston Verdeen. I have the pleasure of filling in for Christy today while she's out of town. Some might call me the interim president in that case, but I'll just stick to the Director of Community Partnerships and Strategy for today. To begin, I'll briefly share a few updates on some of our initiatives, followed by introductions of our guest speakers. After approximately 18 months of advancing recommendations from the City of Milwaukee's operational review, the Fiscal Strength Committee will reconvene to identify how GMC and the city can best partner in this next phase of work. The focus will shift towards operational innovation and long-term sustainable outcomes. More updates will be shared about this framework and how it's rebuilt in partnership with the Mayor's office. Work continues around our youth engagement for the summer. This team, which consists of many youth-serving community partners and stakeholders, is finalizing a demo version of a new citywide website designed to connect young people and their families to youth engagement opportunities. The team will share this new tool with youth and families at Alderwoman Moore's upcoming Summer Youth Resource Fair on April 2nd. And at the same time, the team is working to secure support to further develop this site and sustain it over the long term. Our education committee recently convened about 15 members and community stakeholders around the MPS operational review, engaging business and civic leaders in constructive discussion about system alignment, financial challenges, and performance improvement. The work remains ongoing and helps to clarify where GMC and its members can provide the greatest strategic value. In parallel, several of our members, including Cecilia Gore and Sue Ella, have helped shape a new executive leadership mentoring pilot with MPS, which is set to launch in May. This initiative pairs experienced GMC executives with district leaders for focused peer-level coaching. Soon, you all will receive an email from us as we seek additional members to serve as coaches. The time commitments are modest but meaningful, with a strong opportunity to strengthen leadership capacity across Milwaukee Public Schools. Now, moving to today's program, Healthy Neighborhoods for a Healthy Economy. Healthy neighborhoods are essential to Milwaukee's economic growth and long-term competitiveness. They influence the city's ability to attract and retain talent, maintain a stable workforce, and encourage business investment. Safe streets, quality affordable housing, strong schools, accessible transit, and vibrant commercial corridors create the kinds of communities where families and professionals want to live, where businesses want to invest. For Milwaukee to grow its population and compete regionally, neighborhood vitality must be recognized not only as a social priority, but as a core economic strategy. Building on last month's discussion about civic engagement, we want to focus today on the important role that healthy neighborhoods play in Milwaukee's overall success. There are fantastic examples of this throughout the community, and today we'll be joined by a group of folks whose perspectives will help illustrate how community investment, collaboration, and communication are critical to neighborhood success, and ultimately, Milwaukee's growth. We are joined today by Kanala Phillips, Neighborhood Dispatch Editor at the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. Ms. Phillips will share insights into residents' lived experiences, how those perspectives can inform public dialogue, shape policy priorities, and guide equitable investment. We'll then hear from Lindsay St. Arnold Bale, Executive Director of Near West Side Partners. Formed 11 years ago by 5 anchor institutions, Advocate Aurora Health, Harley-Davidson, Marquette University, Molson Coors, and Potawatomi Ventures, Near West Side Partners was created to advance a shared goal of revitalizing and sustaining thriving business and residential corridors on Milwaukee's northwest side. Today, we will learn how this collaborative and intentional investment has emerged as a leading model for neighborhood revitalization. Lastly, we'll be joined by Steve Rackey, president of the Northwestern Mutual Foundation, for a conversation about why NM has made neighborhood investment a strategic priority, how that strategy is being implemented, the successes they've seen, and why this work should matter to Milwaukee's broader business community. So let's jump right in. Please join me in welcoming our first speaker, Ms. Phillips.
Hello. How are y'all doing today? Let me try that again. How are y'all doing today? Okay, I like that. An intensive crowd today. All right. Well, like you said, my name is Kanala Phillips, and I have the pleasure of speaking with you all today and then also moderating a conversation with Lindsay and Steve a little later. But first, I want to chat with you a little bit about who I am and what we are trying to do at the Journal Sentinel with the Neighborhood Dispatch. So, for background, my name is Kanala. I'm originally from Madison, Wisconsin, and so I am not a Milwaukee native, which I think is important to make clear when I talk about the work that we're doing. I'm originally from Madison. My mom and family moved to Milwaukee about 10 years ago, and I lived out here for a few years at that time. And then after graduating, I actually went to Kansas City. So I went to Kansas City for about 3 years, and I recently moved back to Milwaukee last June. And so people ask a lot what drew me to Milwaukee, and I'll have to say I've always loved this place. When my mom moved out here 10 years ago, it was one of my first experiences meeting a bunch of black and brown people who not only were from Wisconsin, but proud to be from Wisconsin. And so that is something that has always drawn me to Milwaukee. And I have a lot of family who lives out here as well. So I'm really happy to be back. And in terms of my background in journalism, I've always had a love for looking at the nuances and representation from folks from the Midwest, and partnering with people to create news that they feel like best represents them. And so that's what we're trying to do with the Neighborhood Dispatch. We peg ourselves as a reporting initiative that highlights Milwaukee neighborhoods while partnering with residents to produce neighborhood news with care. And that with care piece is really important to us. We have 4 journalists on the team. Our Metcalf Park reporter, well, let me back up. We have Metcalf Park, Layton Boulevard West, and we have Harambe as our coverage areas. In Metcalf Park, we have April Covedo. In Layton Boulevard West, we have Alyssa Salcido, and in Harambe, we have Everett Eaton. And then we have one visual journalist who serves all 3 neighborhoods, and her name is Angelica Edwards. And so we believe that the beauty of doing this journalism work at the neighborhood level is that we're able to find the heart of really matters to people. By serving one neighborhood at a time, we spend more time with residents. We follow up on issues in a way that is timely and is specific to their needs. And we're always looking for ways to explore how to make stories more accessible to the residents that we're working with and meeting them along the way. So the way that most people might come to the Journal Sentinel might be online through social media, or it might be through the newspaper. But what we realize is that folks might be familiar with our brand. They might not always find themselves on our socials, or they might not always find themselves on our website or with a paper in their hand. And so we're always looking for opportunities to make the news more accessible to folks, whether that be texting out stories to people in Metcalf Park, or hosting events in certain neighborhoods and creating a platform for a discussion where we can follow those questions and conversations up with context. And so for background on the Neighborhood Dispatch and where it's from, this is a project that Greg Borowski, our editor at the Journal Sentinel, really spent time thinking about how we can better serve people in Milwaukee that have traditionally been underserved by news media. And the support for this initiative came from an unprecedented mix of philanthropic support from the Zilber Family Foundation, the Journal Foundation, Bader Philanthropies, Northwestern Mutual Foundation, Greater Milwaukee Foundation, and individual contributors to our community-funded journalism project in partnership with the local media foundation. So that is the Neighborhood Dispatch. We've done a lot of amazing things so far since launching in June. We've met with over 300 people in all 3 neighborhoods. Each reporter on the team has conducted at least 50 or more volunteer hours in each neighborhood. We've planned a listening tour in each neighborhood where we've been able to connect with residents, and that is ongoing. And so we're inviting people to break bread with us, to share conversations about what they're experiencing and seeing on the ground, what they would like to see out of the news. And beyond that, we're also looking for opportunities to invite them to the table and tell us what they would like to see from us. And so I'm going to turn this over to Lindsay St. Arnold to St. Arnold Bell to give us her presentation next. Thank you.
Well, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. And it's so nice to see so many faces on a warm and sunny day. Good to be out of the office and good to be enjoying this brief respite before the rest of March hits us. My name is Lindsay St. Arnold Bell. I'm the Executive Director of Near West Side Partners. And what I'm going to be sharing today is a little bit of a case study of what neighborhood development looks like on the ground. So for those who are not familiar, Milwaukee's Near West Side is comprised of 7 neighborhoods just west of downtown Milwaukee. As Langston mentioned at the beginning, we are a nonprofit organization that is formed by our 5 anchor institutions that share this geography. That's Aurora Healthcare, Marquette University, Potawatomi Ventures, which is the non-gaming arm of Forest County Potawatomi, Harley-Davidson, and Molson Coors. And we have these 7 unique, distinct neighborhoods, and we're really focused on sustaining and revitalizing the businesses and the neighborhoods within this area. Our demographics are really interesting. So we have approximately 28,000 residents, about an equal number of employees, and about 17,000 students that come to our neighborhood every day, from university to elementary. And we have a racial and ethnic demographic that is reflective of the city of Milwaukee as a whole, which is something that we take very seriously. We're very proud of in a city that is frequently topping the list of some of the most segregated cities in the nation. To have a neighborhood that is as diverse as ours is a true benefit. We are also a neighborhood that is experiencing need. Approximately 46% of our residents are families living in poverty. We have a 13-year life expectancy gap between the near west side and our east side neighbors. And almost 20% of our neighbors are facing food insecurity. So while we have a lot of great assets and a lot of great potential, we also recognize that we're working with a population that needs a lot of support. Near West Side Partners, when it was formed, came together strategically to identify where there were gaps in the services that were already happening in the Near West Side, or in the area. And we identified right from the beginning 4 areas that we felt that we were best positioned to move the needle. So that was housing, commercial corridor development, public safety, and community health. And these 4 focus areas are where we spend our time, but we partner, and we're really working on building a resource ecosystem to address things that you don't see up here, like education, workforce development. This work is all rooted in data. We are a data-driven organization, and as we go through the presentation, as I talk later, you'll hear me talk about some of these data points that we've collected and how it guides our work. How we do it is really, I think, unique, and this is something that I'm incredibly proud of. We utilize a asset-based theory of change called the PARC model, which is promoting assets to reduce crime. And our ability to make progress in the areas that I shared and these activities really rests in creating and sustaining and mobilizing multi-sectoral partners. So, of course, our anchor institutions are an important part of that. Our neighbors are an important part of that. The 350 businesses that comprise the Near West Side participate as part of our business improvement district. We engage frequently with our local government partners, with law enforcement, both at MPD, the Sheriff's Office, and MUPD. And through this, we identify problems using the data that we have. We work to come up with collaborative solutions and then implement that. And just as important, we share the story about what happens as that work proceeds. So over the last 10 years, just last year we celebrated our 10-year anniversary, we've seen some pretty significant improvements. We've welcomed over 60 new businesses to the neighborhood. We've distributed over $1 million in grants to businesses and residents, homeowners in the Near West Side, and that's $1 million since 2020. We've helped welcome new vibrant spaces to the neighborhood, including Davidson Park and Concordia 27, and we're starting to see some more activity and investment in public spaces. And a big part of that is improving both our real crime stats and our perceptions of crime. So we've seen an over 25% reduction in crime in the Near West Side, but just as importantly, we have seen our residents reporting feeling safer in the neighborhood. So this work doesn't happen overnight, and not even really in a couple years. As an example, our work on 27th Street has been a multi-year, multi-phase, and multi-sector partnership that is now just bearing fruit. Prior to the formal creation of Near West Side, there was an intentional strategy to systemically address the challenges on the 27th Street corridor. Working with the city of Milwaukee, which owned the southeast block of 27th and Wisconsin Avenue, we were able to work with then Governors Doyle and Walker and a local developer to locate the State Department of Children and Families building there. At that time, we also agreed to address the challenges that were happening right across the street at the mobile gas station on the northeast corner. And in partnership with the city of Milwaukee, Bid 10 funded the sale and removed the #1 impact property at that time. Knowing, though, that that negative impact and those activities would migrate, we then began focusing on addressing the crime magnet that was the tobacco shop. Located just 2 blocks north of that gas station, this was the site of over 300 police calls in a year, open-air drug dealing, ties to international terrorism. It was a really bad place. But because of a loophole in tobacco licensing law, they were able to continue operating. Because of the power of our anchor partnerships and bringing together their lobbying teams, we were able to get the tobacco lobby to the table, along with the governor and the legislature, and to change state law in record time. Took just 6 months to pass bipartisan legislation in 2016, which, if anybody remembers 2016, is pretty notable. The city then took the tobacco owner to court on serious charges, and this motivated the tobacco shop owner to sell it to Penfield Children's Center, which is located just to the south of that, and now Penfield has this land to expand. But in the meantime, it also has a secure and quite good-looking parking lot for its employees. Just as critical as addressing the nuisance properties was working to create safe and welcoming spaces. One major improvement along the 27th Street corridor were our traffic calming planters, which are strategically located at intersections to help curb reckless driving and improve aesthetics. And within 1 year of the placement of these planters, we've seen decreases in speed of 26% along the corridor. So they do get hit, but much rather have a planter be hit than a person, and they do look quite nice in the high season. Our collaborative ability to reduce disorder and crime has led to new major investments and developments along the corridor. For example, once the DCF building went in and the gas station came down, it made it easier for our long-term investor, John Hennessy, to market the Sohi building, which was restored at 27th and Wells. And this became Daddy's Soul Food, and who has now expanded to occupy the entire first floor. Siebert Lutheran Foundation also moved its offices from Brookfield to Milwaukee and is now on the 2nd and 3rd floor of the Sohi building. Near West Side Partners, then with the support of Mick Hatch and his team at Foley and Lardner and Town Bank, then acquired 21 parcels on the southwest corner of 27th and Wisconsin, and this was sold to the state for the development of the future Milwaukee State Office building. And then Rick Wiegand, a longtime Near West Side investor and Bid 10 board member, secured 2 blocks of property just north of that, all of which are now in a state of active development. Site acquisitions are huge, but we also further leveraged opportunities to support the corridor. We got opportunity zone designation, we secured federal funding to invest into storefront improvements, and these were some of the early wins that set the future developments up for success. As we began assessing redevelopment opportunities along 27th Street, we thought really seriously about how we engage our neighbors and our stakeholders in the process of identifying the priorities for the neighborhood. In 2021, in partnership with Harley-Davidson Foundation, Near West Side Partners held a Appreciative Inquiry Planning Summit to identify priority development sites and things that were really working well in the neighborhood that we'd like to lean into. At the same time, our Near West Side Health Working Team, in partnership with Dr. Abiola Keller at Marquette University College of Nursing, led a group concept mapping exercise to identify residents' health and wellness priorities. Over 150 residents categorized and ranked items that would make the Near West Side a healthier place to live, work, play, and stay. And this slide shows the top 5 categories that were identified by our residents. This vision includes the vibrant social spaces, health and wellness services, sustainable businesses, strong inclusive neighborhoods, and affordable housing. And it's a reminder that when we talk to neighbors, the experience in the neighborhood is much deeper than what we may see as we just drive through. There are a lot of things that contribute to the vitality of a neighborhood, and nobody can tell you better than the people who live there. With this information, Near West Side partnered with Wiegand Enterprises and Centers for Independence, shout out to Heidi in the back of the room, and others to begin the development of Concordia 27, the first major investment along the corridor since the construction of the Department of Children and Families building. This is a $20 million redevelopment project that opened in 2024. And quickly, we've become a destination for community gatherings, for health and housing resources, and a catalyst for future development, which is ongoing. So here we are, 12 years later, we are starting to look at a new vision for 27th Street, the future health and wellness corridor. In addition to Concordia 27, we have major investment by Aurora Healthcare into the Beacon, a $50 million redevelopment into health and wellness services. We are looking at a new senior housing development located strategically between our 2 buildings. We have some great long-standing tenants, our Daddies, Penfield, and we see a lot of potential and a lot of momentum happening here on 27th Street. So as we look ahead to the next 10 years, we have a lot of learnings from our work on 27th Street, and we're really excited about what the next decade holds. This includes a focus on 35th Street. We had a design charrette last year, and now we're starting to look at how do we take what we've learned from 27th and carry it forward to the 35th Street corridor. We're exploring new housing opportunities designed to grow and retain our residential population. And then we're working collaboratively with partners to create new plans on how we connect and recreate with a focus on I-94 and the future Rail with Trail project along 30th Street. So these are massive, multi-year projects that cannot happen without sustained support and vision of partners from all sectors. And together, we have the opportunity to ensure that they truly reflect and benefit our neighbors, our neighborhoods, and the greater Milwaukee community. So with that, I believe we are transitioning to a panel discussion over here.
Everyone's mics on?
Yes.
Can you hear me okay?
I think.
Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Lindsay. So, Steve, I'll start with you. Can you take a moment to just share a bit of an overview of Northwestern Mutual's neighborhood investment strategy? What are some of the biggest results you've seen in the last 5 to 10 years, and what have been some of the most surprising?
Sure. So we've been involved in neighborhood work for a little over a decade. And we followed in the footsteps of others who've been before us, Zilber, GMF, others in the room have really done more work in the space than we have. Can you hear me? Is this on? Lit up. Okay, now? Now? Nope. Okay. Oh, that's much better. All right. So 10 years, others have been before us. When we specifically invest in Amani and Metcalf Park on the north side, Muskego Way on the south side. When you think about why did Northwestern Mutual first get into the neighborhood space, you might say, okay, you're a big financial services company headquartered downtown. Why would you wade into these waters? I'd say that as I think about it, the phrase that keeps going back to my mind, for those of you who might be parents, you've probably heard the phrase, you can only be as happy as your least happy child, right? And that's true, I can experience myself, but when you think about it, as a city, Like, we have so much to be really proud about downtown, right? We've had incredible new investments. We have new hotels. We have a list that we can't keep up with of new restaurants that we want to try, new entertainment venues. Things are really booming in downtown. I know we've hosted groups from Louisville and from Hartford to learn, hey, what led to Milwaukee's Renaissance? Why are things going so great? That's wonderful, and we should be proud of it. But if 3 miles away from where I live and work, there are people who don't have a safe place to sleep every night, who are finding more and more challenges getting food because grocery stores aren't staying open, if they can't get a good education because schools aren't up to the task. Like, we really can't be proud of the city as a whole. So we decided we were going to invest in some of the most challenging parts of the city to see if we can all rise up together. It's been a journey. As you said, you've been at it for 12 years or so. It is not an area where you can expect quick results, and it's not a linear path. There are all sorts of twists and turns along the way. Most notably for us, the pandemic really, in the middle of our journey, kind of made us pause and think about the work we're doing. Were we achieving the results we thought we were? Recalibrate a little bit and think about metrics and how we measure success. But it really has been a fascinating journey, and we think we're making great strides. When you ask about what benefits have we seen and what have our successes been, I think some of the biggest successes, if you just look at the tables that are being assembled these days and who's at them, we're seeing more and more conversations with residents, with elected officials, with others, government partners, law enforcement, with funders, all trying to solve some of these big problems together. And in addition to that, we're now really starting to see the flywheel where we're seeing kind of cross-collaboration between neighborhoods, where we're seeing models that work in one, and so, okay, how do we now take that to another neighborhood? And I think that's when we're really going to start to see a lot of this great work come to fruition.
Okay. Well, thank you. So I'm going to throw this next question to you, Lindsay. I know you just talked about all of the great work that Near West Side Partners has done, demonstrating what neighborhood development can look like in these cross-sector partnerships. So from your perspective, why should businesses and policymakers view strong neighborhoods as a core economic strategy, and how does this kind of neighborhood level investment strengthen other areas of city life? And then I'll throw it to you afterwards.
Sounds good. Well, it seems kind of obvious, but neighborhoods are the foundation of a city's vitality. They uphold the culture, they provide the workforce, and they contribute to the long-term stability. So we know that neighborhood level investments can contribute to other areas of the city by really stabilizing communities. When you feel safe, when you feel connected, when you feel proud of the place that you live, it leads to better public health outcomes. It leads to more engagement, civic engagement. It leads to a reduced strain on some of the emergency services and things that can tax cities generally. But there are also some of those really basic things. When you remove the barriers present within neighborhoods and within cities, you have a new workforce that emerges. You have the ability to tap into resources that maybe you didn't know were already right here in your hometown. So I think there's a lot to be said for making those investments and then putting your trust in the people and the neighbors, the residents that are here, and understanding their experience and how it fits into this broader vision for the city.
Thank you. Same question to you.
I certainly agree with everything Lindsay said. And maybe just to add the little flavor that, everyone lives in a neighborhood, right? I live downtown, and everyone goes home to a neighborhood somewhere, whether it's in the city or not. And that's where people experience their day-to-day life, where they get their groceries, where they go to the drugstore, where their neighbors are. And so, we talk about the policymakers, right? They all are representing those neighborhoods as well. We have the county executive, right? you think of your home as your neighborhood. So we want to make sure all of our employees, have a good neighborhood to go back to every day. So no one thinks of the city as a whole. You think of your lived experience and what it's like for you when you go home at night. And we just have to make sure all of those are thriving.
And Steve, so as a major stakeholder in the business community, what was the turning point that led Northwestern Mutual to implement and prioritize this strategy in particular?
Yeah, so the real turning point was back in the Obama administration, where they had a building neighborhood capacity grant program that the city participated in, and we participated as a partner in that. That's what really took us into this space. And as that name would imply, building neighborhood capacity was really about how do you have the residents of the neighborhoods kind of find their voice and organize to bring that voice to fruition. And so we worked for many years, again, with other partners and with the residents to help them organize and help them identify what they needed to have their communities grow. So we really found, again, with the little blip of the pandemic in it, found great success in the neighborhoods we were working with achieving that. And then we had a little pivot point, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, where we said, okay, the neighborhoods are organizing, they're having conversations with their elected officials, they have their neighborhood plans that they're starting to implement. And that allowed us to grow the way we invest and really go deeper into some of the problems that they were identifying. And one which I spoke about to this group before is affordable housing. So that in food insecurity really rose from all of those conversations and allowed us to make deeper investments in those specific areas thanks to the feedback of the residents.
Okay, and then I'm gonna pick on you one more time, but feel free to jump in, Lindsay. I'm wondering about metrics. How do you know that this work is actually working in each of these areas?
Yeah, it's hard, and like I said, it's not an area where we can expect things to change overnight. And in fact, one of the reasons we and our foundation's board liked our shift more in the affordable housing space, as opposed when we were doing the neighborhood development, it was kind of hard to figure out what metrics, what showed the success of these neighborhoods, and we were using crime and some other things as a proxy. And then, as I said, the pandemic hit, and all of our metrics went sideways. And we're like, okay, does that mean that we weren't doing the right thing, or there are these things totally out of our control, impacting the entire city? What we like about the affordable housing space is that it is an area where we can have some more reliable metrics. We can count how many people are being put into an affordable home, how many new homes are being built, how many people are going through new home buyer counseling, how many people are availing themselves of different credit opportunities. So again, for our board, they like that satisfaction that, okay, we can really kind of count things a little bit more and see what success looks like. So, but I'd say in addition to those metrics, the storytelling is an important part of measuring success too, because I can show our board all sorts of numbers of, oh, look at these houses, here's data, but it doesn't compare to seeing a story of how life is impacted. So I thank you and your team for helping bring those stories to life.
Fantastic, well, thank you.
Absolutely. I was just going to say it is a quantitative and qualitative approach, right? We need to have those hard numbers because they mean things to the neighborhood too. To know that there are double-digit decreases in real crime is important. But just as important is understanding, what are people's feelings around the perceptions of safety? And to hear neighbors say, well, I feel safe walking around my neighborhood after dark now. Like that tells us just as important of a story, and maybe even more important than just what a number on a piece of paper would.
And then back to you, Lindsay. What lessons have emerged from Near West Side Partners community-driven initiatives?
Oof, quite a few. One is that the importance of trust. As when you are doing multi-sector partnerships, when you are working with neighbors in places that they live, you need to be serious about building trusting relationships among them. And that looks like showing up all the time, being there when things aren't great, being there to celebrate when they are, and really listening deeply, and not just listening deeply, but then going back and saying, did we get this right? You know, and closing the loop and kind of keeping that door always open so that if things look like they're not headed in the right direction, we are able to pivot and to make a meaningful change. I'd say the other thing is our neighbors have to be engaged actively. You know, this isn't just let's invest for something for a neighborhood. If neighbors aren't part of the envisioning, if they're not co-creating the solutions, it will never be sustainable, and it won't have the impact that we're hoping for. I think too, you know, some of these issues, housing, affordable housing, this is complex stuff. Like, it's not as easy as just saying, hey, we're gonna just pour money into building more housing, or we're going to come up with a new down payment program. Like, there are so many reasons why this has become such a big problem that it requires a lot of partners around the table, a lot of ideas. It requires sometimes setting your ego aside and saying, okay, I don't understand this as fully as I need to, but you know, that's why we've created these ecosystems of support. And then kind of with that, like that complexity it just takes time, you know. The affordable housing crisis is not going to be solved with one nice apartment building or maybe even 10 of them. It will take time, it'll take a concerted effort, it will take sustained investment and interest. And that can take work to keep people excited, to keep people motivated, engaged on.
Something that you touched on, obviously, with adding collaboration to this work to make sure that you're getting insight from different voices. And then when you're working with smaller neighborhoods, you know, we're obviously trying to crowdsource as much as possible to make sure people are happy with maybe the things that you're pursuing. I guess I'm curious, have you ever run into there being too many cooks in the kitchen? Like, what challenges are you all facing when you're doing this work and trying to have as many effective partnerships as possible?
Yeah. You may not always have consensus, and I think you have to come to terms with that. I think the most important part is kind of circling back to that building trusting relationships. The understanding that even if there isn't a true agreement on whether or not this is the best solution, that there's an understanding that it was informed, that people feel like they see how you've come to where you are, and that they know that it's not a one and done, that, you know, this is part of a bigger effort.
What about you?
Well, you know, I'd say the same thing, and just when you think about some of the challenges we face in this world, I know, Lindsay, you mentioned the importance of having all of this be resident-led and having the residents, you know, their voice come through. I know some of the challenges I face personally and personal learnings I've had in this journey. Sometimes you think, oh, I'm with this big smart company and all these resources, and it's easy to say we're going to go in and solve this problem, which is not what is needed and not the approach you can take. It has to be resident-led. And I've had personal experiences I shared in our prep. You know, again, we're dealing in the 53206 zip code, some of the, you know, really underinvested part of town, and you know, we're talking about some investments we're potentially going to make, and some of the residents were very concerned that, oh, well, this is going to cause property values to rise. And with my biases and my point of view, I'm like, well, isn't that great? Isn't that what we're trying to achieve? We're going to have property values grow. And I had to be educated that, hey, you know, I'm not a 75-year-old widow living on a fixed income where if there's a $200 increase in her property tax bill, that might mean she's not going to be able to stay in that home anymore. So I had to be, you know, much more sensitive and take my own personal views and my thoughts to be like, okay, this does need to be resident-led because I am not living this experience the way these, you know, the residents there are, and I don't perceive the same needs and everything that they are, that they're experiencing. A second challenge we're encountering, and it's great that you're stable and your organization so great is when we see some turnover at the nonprofits that we partner with, where you really think you have a good team in place and everyone's clicking together, and then a leader leaves, a key leader who's instrumental in bringing people together, and you kind of have to start building that trust and those relationships and all of that all over again. But I think as we're growing more and kind of building this connective tissue, hopefully those departures one-off don't matter as much, but it can really disrupt it when one or two personalities can have a big impact in these efforts.
Yes. I want to bring the conversation back to some of those key indicators too. We talked about metrics that you may be following or storytelling that you may be following to show you that there's been success in terms of what you invested in or your efforts. But I'm curious, how are you all measuring that you're making inroads like with the everyday resident? Like, is there any way that you're going back and saying, oh, we know we're building trust with this many residents beyond the leaders who might be, leading some of those partnerships?
Yeah. So one thing Near West Side Partners does is an annual resident survey. So we go door to door, knocking on doors, and we have our students from Marquette University support and gathering information about people's neighbors' perceptions of the neighborhood, what's happening, what they hope to see more of, where they're facing some challenges. And that really helps to inform the work that we do. That is where, we found out that there's a significant need for small dollar home repair funds. The average age of the home in our neighborhood is 110 years, and there's a lot of maintenance that's required. And what we found was a lot of people were struggling with just some of the smaller things that could be covered with small dollar repairs. So I think really being active in finding ways to capture that kind of data piece is important. But I think just as important, we are bringing together neighbors in different ways. So we have our quarterly supper club. During summer, we have pop-up events called Bratsphere Thoughts. And these are all events meant to engage people kind of informally and have conversations about what their experiences are to help build those relationships and build connections among neighbors. And then to use that information to kind of help inform where we go next.
I chime in that we're also trying to shift towards more shared metrics. So the Community Development Alliance is a great partner and leader in this space. And again, a lot of partners of theirs are in this room. And rather than try to have our own metrics of, okay, I mentioned a few things before, new houses built, repairs done, home buyer counseling, we are relying on the collective group. And it also, we struggled to figure out, okay, how do we count a portion contribution that helps make what would be otherwise unaffordable house affordable compared to some places where we fund a whole house compared to others where we're helping contribute to a tax incremental finance district. It's really hard to count like one to one. And again, when there's so many other partners contributing, so I think we're leaning towards, okay, we're just going to view this as a collaborative effort, and the success of the collaborative is going to be counted to all of the contributors.
And then Lindsay, what major changes have you seen in Near West Side neighborhoods thanks to these efforts?
Well, I did mention the double-digit decreases in crime, but along with that, we've seen some major investments in housing, and there are two developments that I think are really important for me to call out and are really special. We just saw the reopening of Vets Place Central. This was a complete redevelopment of a transitional and supportive housing space for veterans. And they were housing 82 veterans on Wells Street in a building that was really run down. And they were able to secure funding through WIDA to rebuild their facility, serving the same number of veterans, but now they have their own bedrooms, they have their own bathrooms, they have this great community space. So we're seeing major investments in housing that continue to support and serve the neighbors that are already calling our neighborhoods home. And we're also seeing investments in new housing for folks who are in states of transition. Maida House is very close to completing their housing development in the Valley. So there's a lot of investment that's coming through and really geared towards serving our neighbors in ways that maybe they still need. We're also seeing increases in home ownership. So through partnerships with Axe Housing, we have grown the number of new homeowners in our neighborhood by about 4%, which is pretty exciting. We've also seen some pretty exciting investments into transportation, specifically the BRT line along Wisconsin Avenue. And as we consider the redevelopment of I-94, we're really starting to think about how can we leverage that to really build back better connections between our neighbors on the south side, and then help people see our neighborhood as the well-connected hub that it is, kind of centrally located in the city. So there are a lot of numbers I could share, but I think just as importantly are the things that maybe aren't captured quite so clearly in a report. And that's, we have businesses that are really thriving in our neighborhood. Fruition MKE, which is the coffee shop at Concordia 27, took a big chance by committing to this space and being part of the development process with us. And if you have not had a chance to be there, I would recommend checking it out. Tiffany Miller is a neighbor. She lives in the Concordia neighborhood. She built a coffee shop from the ground up and is now has a thriving business on 27th Street serving her near West Side community. Those are the things that numbers alone really can't tell the story of.
And Steve, same to you. Are there any major changes or progress that really sticks out to you when it comes to your efforts in your key neighborhoods?
Yeah, I think it might be where we're headed next. So that we're getting to the point where these are really scalable and repeatable ideas. We did an experiment not too long ago, working closely with the city and CDA to develop, I mentioned a little bit ago, a tax incremental district for affordable housing, which is a common tool but applied in a totally different way. And it took like data scientists to figure out how you draw the lines for one of these to really capture the right houses and really get that fueled and have the tax increment that's ultimately produced go back into that neighborhood and keep making more and more affordable housing. Now we've done one in Midtown and we're starting to do another, right? So that's the kind of idea that we really want to kind of keep growing and take to more neighborhoods. One other thing that we're trying to do in that same space is to figure out the most economical and desirable form of housing, right? And we've looked at different modular housing and duplexes and, like what do residents want and what can be produced in a way that can then be repeated over and over again once we figure it out. And we're never going to figure out just once, and we're going to constantly be trying new things and testing and sharing those results so that, again, we can make this grow to as many neighborhoods as fast as we can.
And you touched on my last question there, so I guess I'll pivot a little bit and ask, what do you both, in your perspectives, think the city needs in order for this work to be scalable? And is there anything you'd want the room to know about, getting into that space where we're starting to see this work citywide?
I'm going to answer that question by setting up a little, or giving a little backstory. Steve had mentioned some of the collaborations that are happening within neighborhood groups. So Near West Side Partners, we are geographically focused on the Near West Side, and that is where we will spend our time, and that's where we're really investing ourselves. But we know that the success of the Near West Side is tied to the success of the neighborhoods around us. So we've been working very closely with neighbors through the RON Coalition, Reclaiming Our Neighborhoods, on addressing housing quality across 11 different neighborhoods in the city of Milwaukee. We're working very closely with the 30th Street Industrial Corridor, Havenswood EDC, and Northwest Side CDC on neighborhood planning around a future Rail with Trail project. So there's a lot of collaboration that's happening kind of among the neighborhood organizations, but that can be really hard to share and to communicate with the folks who fund us. And I think when we talk about these projects, we know that the most success that you will see is through these collaborations and these coalitions. But it's not always the easiest work to explain. So first of all, the work that you do is critical to us. But I would say what we really need in the city is long-term sustained investment. And that could be financial, it could be time and talent, it could be technical assistance. I mean, there's a lot of ways, but kind of a coalescing around these organizations that are already out there doing the work, trusting them to lead it forward, and investing what is most meaningful at that time to really make an impact.
Now, same to you, Steve. What are some of the things you think the city needs in order to scale this work?
I'll give the simple answer. As a funder, we would always love more additional funders. So if I know after our talk about housing, as Joanne in the room, I think the Cole Foundation stepped up and started doing some housing work. So the more the merrier in this space. And I think you can all be assured it is money well spent and money that's going to really have a lasting impact on our home.
Thank you. Is there anything else you want to add, either of you, before we close out? Well, thank you. We're going to pivot to our table discussions, so I'll throw it back to Langston to introduce those.
Test, test. If I talk really loud, then we can hear it. So again, thank you to our speakers for their expertise and their perspective. We'd like to now use the next, we got about 15 to 20 minutes for a discussion at our tables about how we can collectively prioritize and advance this work. You'll see a two-part discussion prompt in just a moment on our screen behind me. And lastly, we ask that each table assign a note taker so that we can capture your feedback and use it to help GMC strategic direction moving forward. So enjoy your time together. Let's discuss. Thanks. All right, so we're looking for a couple reflections from the group. Deshaun and Heather will go around with the mics.
Yes. It'd be great if you could, so then everybody would listen.
All right. Heather told me to stand so everybody would listen. This is an animated group. It's a good discussion. So one of the things we talked about, there's a lot going on. It's very complicated. It'd be really nice to know who's doing what where. Overlay that with the neighborhoods, and then also, can you hear me now? Overlay it with the neighborhoods. I think also we talked about how neighborhoods are not necessarily cut into nice little political districts either. So how does that all tie together? That's it.
We had a rousing good time at our table. I think we're lucky to have Stephanie Sherman, one of the leaders of Near West Side Partners, at our table, and she quickly answered to the question of what can you or your organizations do to help foster equitable growth beyond your campus. They need developers, and so they need more participants. What didn't come up, but what I was going to raise is I want to thank the Journal Sentinel for their effort in Central City. I was lucky enough to be a 20-year plus Journal Sentinel employee, and one of my tasks was to look at how to encourage circulation in the Central City. All my ideas were shot down. So, 30 years later, this new effort comes up. It's a new age in journalism, and it needs to be funded by the outside in many respects. But thank you, Greg, and thank you to everyone who's participating in that, because we get to read the stories of what's happening in the communities, like what Near West Side Partners is doing and other organizations.
All right, we had a few themes. I think, from from our speakers, you kind of have two different types of neighborhoods, right? You have those neighborhoods where you have anchors, and so engaging those anchors where they exist, and then in the other scenario, connecting anchors or adopting neighborhoods, making those connections. Third theme being identifying opportunities and sharing those opportunities for investment. And we just recognize the importance of sustaining the engagement and recognize from the model that was shared, long-term, community-centered, and making connections between the sectors. And then I'll just shamelessly plug it if, I think there are opportunities. So I'm Theo Lipscomb. I'm the Executive Director for Local Initiative Support Corporation. We're a community development financial institution. I work with both of those partners. I work with many other partners. So if you have a real genuine interest in connecting to a neighborhood, I'd be happy to have a conversation. I've got lots of partners who would love to connect with you. If you're not willing to go that far, but you want to make an investment in neighborhoods, the Greater Milwaukee Foundation, and designate your investment, and they will find a partner, one of ours or others that are doing this work. And I would say, if you're interested in the mapping, we know where the work's happening. And if you're looking for developers, we run the Associates in Commercial Real Estate program. So I have 330 graduates, probably 30 of whom are doing development, and would love to be co-developers with any anchor institution.
Thank you, Theo.
Okay, so our table mostly reflected on the panel discussion and the housing issue here in our city. Reflected on how much this is a long-term issue. This is a very complex issue. This is the long game. And then in some aspects, it's hyper-local, that the importance of getting the residents involved and really listening to the residents and responding as the residents are sharing their concerns and what they think about their community. We also thought about how we need to pay attention to where the money is coming into our community for these big projects. The 27th Street corridor was catalytic because there was some state dollars that were attached to parts of that corridor that then could be leveraged to do some of this additional other development. We have 35th Street, I think, will be a great next model, and we talked about National Avenue. We have a lot of state dollars and a lot of federal dollars being poured into National Avenue. There are opportunities that I think we need to pay attention to when outside dollars come into our city that we can leverage for change. And then lastly, we talked about governmental participation. With respect to housing, especially, there are a lot of folks that run or own a lot of properties in our city that can go years and years and years and know the system and not have to do a thing to improve their properties or help the residents in their properties have a decent place to live. And I think governmental authorities can play a role in helping us to improve the quality of affordable housing or quality of housing in our neighborhoods.
Any others? Okay. Thank you. Great discussion today. Before I close this out, I wanted to acknowledge, because I didn't do it earlier, County Executive David Crowley is in our midst. He sat right next to me to the right, which is why I can't believe I missed him in the introduction. But David, thank you. I think we can all agree that neighborhood is the center of what forms community. We heard today that when impact and change happen at the neighborhood level, we'll see greater things for our community as a whole. Our neighborhoods are the basis for so many aspects of life in Milwaukee: housing, school, health and wellness, our workforce. This is an economic investment we all need to be making on a variety of levels. Our speakers today shared quite a few success stories, and we appreciate that we can all learn from and identify how we might be able to carry on success in our own businesses or neighborhoods. Thank you to all of our speakers today and to our incredible host, Cecilia Gore. Cecilia, thank you again. Cecilia is about to hop on a flight and head to spring training, so we really appreciate you sticking around to host us today. Also, She provided 2 brewer prize packs, and the winners are Linda Gorns-Levy and Paul Eberly. So, our next meeting is on April 13th at the Medical College of Wisconsin, hosted by Dr. John Raymond. And this meeting is adjourned. Enjoy your 60-degree weather today.